This is where we often say on the program, it's hard to eat yourself into therapeutic range. I mean, we should all try and eat a rainbow of fruits and vegetables every day, like you talk about in how many 70 books that you've written. But at the end of the day, it's hard to get out of the notion of supplementation for pregnant moms, and for that matter, even the young ones. You know,
what's funny is that we've been talking about all this prenatal nutrition, and we haven't even touched on folic acid and some of the more well accepted ones, because we know that those are just foregone conclusions, just basic, but they're still important.
Right, absolutely.
Well, and to come back to the epigenetic conversation, because we have to unpack that, right? It turns out that we're all very different from our methylation capabilities, right? And without getting into the weeds about methylation, or you can simplify it, I encourage you to. But that's what we're trying to manage, aren't we? When we're talking about folic acid or folate and all these different things.
Correct. And when we were talking about the show, we were talking about the Gowdy mice study, and this was really amazing, because what they looked at basically two genetically identical mice. The only difference between these two mice, they look different now, don't they? You have a fat yellow mouse that's associated with an increased risk for obesity, cancer, and poor health. They live shorter. Then you have a healthy brown mouse. They don't look the same, but genetically they're identical. The only thing that is different is what the mother was fed. And we now have an epidemic of poor metabolic health. And it will undoubtedly be shown that maternal nutrition is a big pathway to what we see here towards poor health. And so in what these factors that they looked at in this study were methylating factors, things like folic acid and B12 and special forms of methionine. So again, it comes down to that mother taking care of that fetus. And then beyond that, one of my favorite real-life illustrations of the power of nutrition is looking at the difference between a queen bee and a worker bee. The queen bee is 2.5 times larger. It is the only bee that reproduces. It lives about 2.5 years. The worker bee, it's smaller. It works its whole life, and it only lives about 4 to 6 weeks. Genetically, they're identical. The only difference between a queen bee and a mother bee, the only difference between a queen bee and a worker bee is what that larva was fed. The queen bee gets royal jelly, and the worker bee gets worker jelly. And we want to make sure that every baby born in the world is getting royal jelly.
Which has the opportunity to be a queen bee. I like it.
Which is all the macronutrients, all the micronutrients, all the omega fatty acids, all the amino acids, basically all the essential nutrients.
Right.
Which was coined, the term was coined back in 1941 by the American Academy of Science.
And we also Dr. Pizzorno and I also like the unimportant molecules. And a good example of that is Svent Georgi, the discoverer of vitamin C. It wasn't the vitamin C that was preventing many of the symptoms of scurvy. He was looking at the bioflavonoids in the whole lemon, and so they work very well together. I'm a big fan of flavonoids. Rich, colorful fruit and vegetables are rich in these very, very valuable health-promoting compounds.
And just think about what the eyes use.
Yes.
It's all the flavonoids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we tell people, mothers are the most important cohort, I'm sure, to eat a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. What is a serving, by the way? A half cup?
A serving is defined as 1/2 cup cooked and 1 cup uncooked fruit or vegetable.
Okay, so if the rainbow's got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, and by the way, bioflavonoids, as you're describing, is probably more of the purple and orange varietal of fruits.
Even green leafy vegetables are very high in the flavonoids. We have the carotenoids that are found in root vegetables and green leafy vegetables as well. But for most of the fruit, especially, it's these flavonoids that are really important. They're also found in dark chocolate and green tea.
The yummy stuff too. Not milk, not high sugar dark chocolate. But I guess what I'm getting at is, so that's 6 half cups of fruits of each color and 6 half cups of veggies.
Yeah, I like to go if you can get 5 servings of vegetables a day and 2 servings of fruit. I think that's ideal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, with younger kids, sometimes we have to be creative in how we get those veggies down there.
No, that's where the word smuggling comes in.
Well, let's talk about that, because a lot of moms out there, you know, they may be pregnant, they may be on to their second, third child, et cetera. They have a struggle with introducing the healthy food, especially in this day and age where everything is tasty, not healthy. Right. Everything is sensorial. How do we get back to that introduction? I've heard the whole notion, keep on bringing it to their palate, keep on reintroducing it. But words of wisdom, I mean, besides what they should eat, how do they get it into them?
That's it. And it starts early. I remember my kids, they loved eating raw broccoli. It was the funniest thing, you know, because we'd go to parties and, you know, birthday parties and stuff, and they developed a taste. And it's really interesting about our taste buds. They've been distorted so much by modern food technology, but we're really drawn to those bittery foods early on. We need those compounds. So the bitter taste receptors, they can be trained and they can be enhanced over, especially when they're young.
Well, yours was broccoli. My son, this is not an exaggeration. He would call me and ask the dad at 3-4 years old, "Daddy, don't forget the Brussels sprouts." I was like, "What kind of kid is this?" So they can, and I think it was that repetition: soups, shakes, salads, and these things that.
And for the older kids, these superfood powders that you can mix in with smoothies, or even just mix in with water or oat milk or coconut milk. You can make them taste really good. Great way. You might have some real life suggestions.
Same thing.
As well.
I think that principle of avoiding the real sweet foods as you introduce, 5, 6, 7 months old. That's the key. Because if they don't get introduced to those sweetness, then the sort of original palate will remain itself.
Yeah.
But it's the sweetness that overrides the
and I feel like there are plenty of superfruits that can be introduced, and maybe if it's not as sweet as some kids' palates appreciate it, you can add the banana in. The classic banana sweetens or dates sweetens up things pretty quick. Here's my anecdote: is when it worked with my kids, and it often works with my patients' young ones, is get them to audit the fridge. So that is to say, you teach them early that they need a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. You bring them to the grocery store and you have them help you in the shopping. And it doesn't matter which purple they like. They get to choose. But if mom, dad were out of red, if they audit the fridge and you get them involved in that way, it works for my kids. It tends to get them engaged. That's brilliant. Put them in charge, create some autonomy there.
And, one trick that we stressed was having something fresh at every meal.
Right,
it had to be alive. It couldn't be cooked or packaged or whatever. It had to be fresh.
Stay with the basics again.
Yeah, and as far as basics, I think we should touch on some basic supplements for, we can go through these different age ranges.
Yeah,
You said 0 to 2. So you like the D3 right from the get-go?
D3 from the get-go. At 6 months, 7 months, when foods get introduced, that's when I really think about the cod liver oil or some sort of fish oil, algae oil with that. Along with, considering multivitamin mineral, depending on what mom is eating and taking and supplementing
the liquid, the drops.
The liquid drops.
Yeah.
And then I like the vitamin C as an antioxidant.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a good basic start.
That's beautiful. And it's very safe and it's very important. But we can do a lot through the mother's diet. Now, for those that maybe can't breastfeed, there are options. There are better formulas out there than some of the standards. And the key is you got to find one that agrees with the child and doesn't cause any distress or harm.
Right.
So on that front, I've always been looking, what formulas are out there, for the last. It's been like a pet search for me over the last 30 years. Finally, for me, always I ended up at sheep's milk as being like the most palatable, the most similar, the most digestible, especially compared to cow's milk and even compared to goat's milk formulas. So finally in New Zealand, there actually is a whole movement underfoot there to actively produce sheep milk infant formula now. So there's 2 companies producing very high quality grass-fed sheep milk formulas from birth to 6 months, 6 months to 1, and then follow-on formula. So readily available now. Didn't used to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Possibly also the most immunocompatible, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like that's...
And protein structure-wise, too.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like this is really the conversation a lot of parents grapple with, new ones in particular, and it starts here without being too controversial. When, what, and how to introduce solids. Because really the extrapolation from this is what do I then need to supplement my child with that I otherwise am maybe not getting enough out of the diet. But then the conversation still has to happen. What should we be avoiding in this food introduction schedule? So it's a little bit layered. Okay, so now we're on to beyond vitamin D, omega-3 supplementation. We know we can't get enough out of our diets. The micronutrients have been established. A child multi. What else?
Yeah. Well, you go ahead. I'll let you.
Got the most brilliant room. Did I stump you guys with that one?
No, it's.
No, I'll pass on Dr. Sayre's advice. It's one of his key things, beautiful thing. So his introductory food is at 6 months avocado. That's the first food. Fatty acids, taste, the texture is kind of neutral. You're not getting too much sweet, too much bitter. And then at 7 months, salmon. He's like 7 months salmon. You got the fatty acids, you got the protein, easily digestible. So, I mean, it just pivots the whole conversation if you start thinking avocado and salmon, not rice cereal and this.
Right.
And it really creates that pathway where the child's palate is not being taught. It's being, given something that is respectable, that it can handle, that won't skew it. And at the same time, you're getting those essential nutrients.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And then for children, 2 to 4, we have special considerations for supplements. And I mentioned iron. It's still the number 1 nutritional deficiency in the world. So we don't want to be drawing blood from the child to check their iron levels. So we have to utilize iron supplementation to provide an insurance policy that they're getting enough iron. So please, mothers, consider
iron,
that simple supplement, because it can make all the difference in how your child develops and how their brain functions.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do kids need to be, or what do moms need to be cognizant, parents need to be cognizant about in terms of what not to maybe introduce, or at least too early on in the food introduction schedule? What are we worried about may cause, immune dysregulation or gut dysregulation? We hear a lot about gluten and dairy and things like that.
Those would be the ones. You'd want to stay away from those that are common problems as they get older. So stay away from gluten, stay away from milk, stay away from other common allergens, which are eggs, peanuts, soy. And other nuts I would throw in there as well.
Yeah. No, definitely gluten and cow dairy is at the top of the list.
And so by avoiding dairy, are we concerned about calcium? We hear this a lot.
Sheep's milk.
Right. You're a big fan.
You can get it from there. Obviously, you can supplement with it. Liquid calcium should always be taken with magnesium, the other cofactors, zinc, vitamin D. But it really doesn't have to be a concern that a child is not getting cow's milk. It's not the only source of calcium.
Right.
We can supplement, and then we've got sheep's milk, goat's milk.